Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss my conclusions I've drawn about studying American history by reading historians I trust who don't seem to have too much of an agenda, um, looking at their primary sources, letters, journals, legal documents, newspaper accounts, and trying to see if I can come to the same conclusion or if I have something different I see. And I hope that you, even though you will not agree with everything I say, you might not agree with anything I say, but the point is you should know about the items, the events, people, and places that I'm discussing to be conversant in American history, and you probably should know more than I know. So I hope you do study. So we're going to finish today with my paper on why did my Baptist Southerners, white Baptist Southerners, what made them go from initially being opposed to slavery um, to accommodating it and being outspoken proponents of it, even Baptists in the having a lot of slaves themselves. How did that happen? So we've been discussing that, and we're going to continue to discuss that today. And this will be it for now on slavery. We'll move on to some other things after this. But it's a big topic in American history. It's very important, and we should at least have conclusions about it. So let me finish with my thoughts on slavery for now from my paper. Now, the influence of religious sentiment upon culture is very important in the study of slavery in America. Religious practice is influenced by cultural forces, and those forces are influenced by religious practice. As Cardinal Richelieu of the 17th century France made the Roman Catholic Church an arm of the state, so did circumstances in the antebellum South make the institutionalized and mainstream Baptist and other evangelical churches an arm of the slave power, which is what people called the upper crust slave owners, um, the political power they had, slave power. You find that in a lot of documents at the time. Baptist and evangelical sentiment turned from disapproval of slavery to an acceptance and even justification of it. The secular culture provided force to assist with that change of sentiment, not only in ways previously mentioned in this paper, but also in minor ways with laws making it illegal to free slaves, as well as vagrancy laws, which punish poor whites' associations with blacks. And for laws against freeing slaves, you can see Jeter in the Recollections of a Long Life, page 68. For the use of vagrancy laws for social control, see Carrie Lee Merritt, A Vile, Immoral, and Profligate Course of Life, Poor Whites and Enforcement of Vagrancy Laws in Antebellum Georgia in Southern Society and its Transformation, 1790 to 1860, edited by Susanna Delfino, Michelle Gillespie, and Louis M. Kyriakides. That's the University of Missouri Press, 2011, page 25. Modern Baptists are, in the main, premillennial, believing the world will become worse and worse until Christ returns to subdue it. Evangelicals in the 19th century, however, including Baptists, both North and South, saw Christianity bringing in a thousand-year millennium or golden age before handing the world over to Christ in a doctrine called postmillennialism. Southern evangelicals grew to believe and to proclaim that slavery was honored by the Bible and was a perpetual system reflecting the order of God's plan. And you can see confirmation of that in Jack P. Maddox Jr.'s article, Pro-Slavery Millennialism, Social Eschatology and Antebellum Southern Calvinism in the American Quarterly, Volume 31, Number 1, Spring of 79, 48 and 50 pages. In fact, a belief in the imminence of this millennium that man was going to bring in was so strongly felt that a Methodist preached two sermons on it before Congress just prior to the Civil War. And I refer you to Fountain E. Pitt's A Defense of Armageddon, or Our Great Country Foretold in the Holy Scriptures in Two Discourses, delivered in the Capitol of the United States at the request of several members of Congress on the anniversary of Washington's birthday, 1857. Um, so you can read those online. So the 19th century postmillennial view all but died out by 1936 as a result mainly of the total war conditions of the early 20th century. Recommend you read James H. Moorhead, The Erosion of Postmillennialism in American Religious Thought, 1865 to 1925, in the journal Church History, volume 53, number 1, March 1984, pages 61 and 77. Most Americans have heard the national anthem that goes, "Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord," a classic example of millennial religious thinking that was prevalent in antebellum America on both sides of the slavery issue, written by Julia Ward Howe, The Battle Hymn of the Republic. American evangelicals saw America's mission as to bring all mankind into the kingdom of Christ. And confirming that, read Timothy L. Smith's Righteousness and Hope, Christian Holiness and the Millennial Vision in America, 1800 to 1900, in American Quarterly Magazine, Volume 31, Number 1, Spring 79. So Southern evangelicals typically viewed slavery as a part of that 1,000-year golden age, reflecting God's order and the slave owner's paternal responsibility for the slave, as well as the slave's position in society being mandated by God. And so now we're going to conclude. In the last quarter of the 18th century, the Baptists in the southern United States considered themselves part of the lowly and social outcasts of society, taking up the call of the oppressed, including the slave. You can read that in The Bond of Wickedness by Essex. As the 19th century opened, Baptists in the Maine and that region consisted mostly of blacks and poor classes of whites scorned by the white Southern gentry. Read Loveland's Southern Evangelicals on the Social Order. As this paper, and I've talked about, showed several cultural, economic, and social conditions began to change, slave owners began to enter congregation controlled church organizations, because the congregation of the Baptist church at that time controlled the organization. Ministers sought higher education. Before that, they weren't educated. They just used the Bible and came into contact more and more with slave owning heirs, the desire to garner personal wealth and inheritable slaves, the adapting of notions of Southern honor in defense of a culture against Northern abolitionists, and the justification of slavery from a biblical perspective. And those all contributed to the evolution of the Baptist mind in the acceptance of slavery. Americans believed that they were a chosen people moving history in the right direction with a covenant with Israel's God, preparing the world to be received by Christ. I recommend you read Daniel Walker Howell's What Hath God Wrought? The Transformation of America, 1815 to 1848, Oxford University Press, page 286. This essentially postmillennial viewpoint not only created some powerful movements for social reform in the North, but on the flip side, guaranteed that slavery, considered part of God's divine plan of order for society in the South, would be justified by preachers when possible and necessary. As preachers became more educated, accepted as having a higher social status, and became more visible to the general population, they became the spokespersons, the PR men, so to speak, for slavery. These factors turned the opinions of Baptist churches in the southern United States in favor of slavery before the Civil War. So we're going to move on to a new topic next time, and I just hope that whatever I've said, no matter what you believe about it, will spur you to study and dig and come to your own conclusions. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again soon.